Hey everyone, dear friends. This is Drake on the Crime Story Diaries channel. Today we'll be examining a disturbing case, so I invite you to watch the video. Don't forget to leave your comments and likes. A 14-year-old schoolgirl went on a date with her boyfriend, but never returned home. The worried mother immediately contacted the police, and a few hours later, the girl's naked body was discovered in a forest thicket. Almost immediately, the investigators had a prime suspect who gave himself away by his actions. However, the shocking details that emerged during the investigation stunned even seasoned detectives. This case became the longest trial of the 2000s in Scotland. Jodi Jones was born in 1989 in the small Scottish village of Easthouses. Her parents, James and Judith, worked at the local branch of the Royal Mail and raised 3 children, with Jodi being the youngest. From an early age, the girl was known for her intelligence, composure, and great ambitions. She had a clear talent for drawing and writing poetry, and the school principal predicted a brilliant and successful future for Jodi. Perhaps everything would have turned out that way if not for a sudden tragedy that forever changed the lives of the Jones family. When Jodi was just 9 years old, her father, who had long struggled with mental health issues, decided to voluntarily take his own life. This event dealt a crushing blow to the entire family. The mother had to quit her job to take care of the 3 children. The eldest daughter, Janine, took the loss especially hard, and at one point, it was decided to send her to her grandmother's for a while. For little Jodi, this was yet another blow, as her sister was her closest person, the only one she trusted with her innermost secrets and who truly understood her. This feeling was mutual. Mom jokingly called Jodi a little mentor, and although Janine eventually returned home, the upheavals Jodi experienced did not pass without a trace. As she grew older, her personality and appearance changed rapidly. The girl entered a rebellious phase. She dyed her hair in flashy colors, started listening to punk and metal, and by the age of 14, she became addicted to marijuana and alcohol. In the early 2000s, the goth movement was gaining popularity among teenagers. Gloomy young men and women immersed in melancholy, dressed in black, and fascinated by themes of tragedy and death. For a child going through the loss of a father, this subculture seemed very appealing. Moreover, Jodi began to self-harm. It's not surprising that it was in this environment that she met a kindred spirit, a young man who completely shared her interests and understood her like no one else. Luke Mitchell was born on July 24, 1988. Was a year older than Jodi in school, and was also the youngest child in the family. However, unlike his girlfriend, he seemed to have no apparent reasons for such behavior. His parents divorced when the boy was 11, but his mother successfully coped with raising 2 children, providing them with quite comfortable living conditions. Mitchell attended a Catholic school and was known as a well-mannered and always elegantly dressed young man. He was interested in military history, horseback riding, and motorcycles, a typical middle-class representative. However, at the age of 13, inexplicable metamorphoses began to happen to him. Luke started experimenting with his appearance and drastically changing his worldview. He grew his hair long, completely updated his wardrobe, giving preference to black clothing, with a long, dark coat becoming an invariable attribute. Luke became passionate about heavy metal and rock, as well as Satanism and everything connected with it. His idol was the shocking musician Marilyn Manson, whose work still causes a lot of controversy to this day. The change in image was accompanied by a decline in academic performance, constant fights, and other problems at school, as well as drug abuse. Luke smoked marijuana several times a day for a whole year, both during and after school. Another integral feature of his new image was gloomy musings and intimidating classmates with scary stories, sometimes turning into direct threats. Once he told a classmate that he wanted to get high and kill someone, then pulled out a knife and added that he knew the best way to cut someone's throat. Unfortunately, the interlocutor did not take these words seriously enough. The changes in Luke did not go unnoticed by the teachers. In his school essays, he increasingly wrote about violence and worshiping Satan. In one of them, the young man doubted the existence of God and declared that people need Satan for balance. In addition, the teenager's textbooks and notebooks were filled with brutal drawings depicting satanic symbols and the like. A concerned teacher turned to the school psychologist for help, obviously to no avail, because in the next paper, Luke wrote that they were imposing some psychopath teacher on him, sending him to a psychiatrist just for being tougher and harsher than the rest. At the same time, the guy emphasized that the decision to follow the teachings of Satan does not at all imply the need for psychiatric intervention. In early 2003, two tortured hearts finally found each other. Luke Mitchell and Jodi Jones started dating. For the girl, this relationship clearly meant much more. Luke became her first love, her first boyfriend, and soon, her first sexual experience. Somewhere in late spring or early summer, Jodi wrote in her personal diary that her feelings for Luke were not just a teenage crush, but true love. She confessed that she would die for him if he asked, emphasized his tenderness and how he comforts her when she cries, noted her willingness to believe everything he says. That's how the young girl described her emotions. However, Luke Mitchell did not feel anything of the kind. In the same period, he was seeing another girl. And believe me, she was about to experience something far more terrible than the exposure of infidelity. In early 2003, Jodi's mother found out that her daughter was using drugs and forbade her to meet with friends, especially with the guy whom she had also been hiding from the family for several months. Only Jodi's sister Janine knew about Luke's existence in the girl's life, and it was she who eventually told her mother everything. House arrest ended on June 30th, and Jodi, of course, arranged to meet with her beloved, sending him a message. Their special place was Roan's Way, a path through a wooded area connecting the girl's house with Luke's dwelling. Around 5 in the evening, Jodi announced that she was going on a date and rushed out the door. Despite the end of the punishment, the mother set a curfew for her daughter. When the appointed time came and the girl did not show up, Judith Jones called Luke Mitchell. He stated that they had not met, and that he had not seen Jodi that evening. This news greatly puzzled the woman, because her daughter had specifically asked permission to go on a date and seemingly had no other plans. Then the mother said that the family was going to search, and Mitchell immediately volunteered to help. He took his dog and arrived at the Joneses' house. Around 10 in the evening, family members, Luke Mitchell, and several volunteers were combing the vicinity of East houses, including the very path Jodi was supposed to take to the meeting. Roan's Way was the shortest route from New Battle, where Luke lived, to Jodi's house, and was perfect for secret rendezvous as it was hidden from prying eyes. On one side, it was bordered by a high stone wall, on the other, by a forest with cliffs. Once there, Luke Mitchell headed without hesitation to a gap in the wall at the far end of the path on the New Battle side. He climbed over to the other side and, not at all surprised, announced to the others that Jodi had been found, and she was dead. The clock showed only 22:30. The search party members froze in shock, and the Jones family plunged into frenzied grief. Even in such a terrible state, they did not immediately notice how quickly and confidently Luke Mitchell discovered the girl's body. It seemed he had hidden it there himself. However, the young man claimed that it was the dog that led him to the gap. According to experts, the injuries found on Jodi Jones's body indicated a personal motive for the crime. The brutality and multiplicity of the injuries testified to the attacker's extreme rage, a real outburst of anger. Perhaps a quarrel broke out between the young people, which turned into a fight. The autopsy revealed numerous stab wounds, bruises, and signs of strangulation. It is assumed that during the altercation, the perpetrator struck Jodi in the face several times and then began to strangle her. Losing her balance, the girl sank to her knees. Then the killer grabbed her by the hair and slit her carotid artery with a knife, which caused her death. But that was not enough for him. After removing the victim's clothes and tying up the body, he inflicted multiple stab wounds. Within 10 days of the murder, the police interviewed about 1,500 people and searched about 250 homes and businesses. Not a single building in East Houses and New Battle was left uninspected. And even despite such large-scale measures, no one aroused as many questions and suspicions among the investigators as 14-year-old Luke Mitchell. Shortly before the tragedy, the police received information about a possible motive for the crime. Another girl admitted that she considered herself Luke's girlfriend, and was unaware of Jodi's existence until she heard about their relationship on the news. Detectives speculated that Jodi might have found out about the cheating, which provoked a conflict. As a result, Luke lost his composure and brutally dealt with his girlfriend. This was also indicated by a find not far from the crime scene. The lovers' initials were carved on a tree. 2 months after the start of the investigation, Luke Mitchell was suspended from school after refusing to be isolated from other students. He was interrogated as a witness, but the young man stubbornly stuck to his story. As an alibi, he stated that he was cooking dinner at home, which was confirmed by his mother and older brother. By the way, Luke's mother played a very significant role in this investigation. Some witnesses claimed that Corinne's relationship with her son was unhealthy. The guy often slept in her bedroom. She also did not react in any way to Luke's addiction to marijuana and generally indulged all his unhealthy whims. For example, at the age of 14, he was actively involved in Satanism, constantly watched horror movies, had a collection of porn magazines, was interested in stories about terrible murders, and listened to heavy metal and rock. On his school textbooks, inscriptions were found: "Hail Satan, Lord of Hell, and I offer my flesh, blood, and soul to the dark ruler of hell." During the investigation, it turned out that the knife Luke always carried with him suddenly disappeared immediately after the murder. Only a sheath from it was found in the house, with the initials of Jodi Jones, the dates of her birth and death, 1989 to 2003, as well as a quote from the vocalist of her favorite band, Nirvana: "The worst day I ever had was the one when tomorrow never came." In addition, Luke's long coat, in which he was seen shortly before the murder and on the day of the tragedy, mysteriously disappeared. The Mitchells' neighbor said that on the evening of June 30th, Corinne was burning something in the backyard of the house. During interrogation, the woman stated that it was dry grass. For a long time, she denied that such a thing had ever existed in her son's wardrobe. And then she bought him a new, exactly the same coat, continuing to insist that the previous one did not exist. Luke himself could not clearly explain the disappearance of these items, and 5 months later, for Christmas, he received a new knife as a gift from his mother. Additional suspicions were raised by the moment Jodi's body was discovered. None of those present that evening on Roan's Way could recall seeing strange behavior from Luke's dog or hearing it bark. On the contrary, it seemed that Luke knew exactly where the body was hidden and purposefully went there. Moreover, even in summer at 22:30, especially in the forest, pitch darkness reigns, and the young man, upon seeing the body, did not doubt for a moment that it was Jodi in front of him, not to mention the monstrous injuries that made identification difficult. At the first interrogation, the guy said that he recognized her by her red hair. However, the others denied that it was visible. Thus, in 2004, Luke Mitchell was officially charged with the murder of his 14-year-old girlfriend, Jodi Jones. At the preliminary stage, and to this day, he does not admit his guilt and continues to insist that he was at home. The prosecution presented a number of strong pieces of evidence in court that one way or another discredited Mitchell's alibi and pointed to his involvement. For example, 2 witnesses claimed that they saw Luke and Jodi together around 1650 on the day of the murder, and 50 minutes later, he appeared in New Battle alone. Records of his phone conversations showed that at 1654 he called the speaking clock service. When asked by the detective why Luke did not just look at the wall clock at home if he was cooking dinner at that moment, the young man did not know what to answer. There was also no reasonable explanation as to why Luke did not look for Jodi if she did not come to the agreed meeting. The guy simply said that she probably did not feel like it, and that evening she was with him. The prosecution had a strong counter-argument. Jodi was very much in love with Luke Mitchell and met with him several times a day when the opportunity arose. The girl lied to her family and ran away from home for the sake of dates with him. And that evening, when her mother had just lifted all the restrictions, she was unlikely to go to anyone else. The position and condition of the girl's body at the time of discovery indicated that she had independently crossed to the other side of the wall, which automatically proved that she trusted the person she was going to. Luke's own brother became almost a key witness at the trial. It turned out that during the first interrogation, he gave false testimony, supporting his mother's version that Luke was at home cooking dinner. However, later, when examining his computer, it was discovered that during the time period when the murder occurred, Luke's brother was watching porn at home. When asked about this, the young man changed his testimony, stating that if someone else had been in the house at that time, he definitely would not have watched adult movies. During cross-examination, these words were used as confirmation that neither Luke nor his mother were at home at that moment. Later, Corinne was even charged with giving false testimony. In addition, the team of prosecutors tried to discredit her as a witness, referring to the case when Corinne lied in a tattoo salon that Luke had already turned 18 so that he could get tattoos in half a month. This happened in October 2003, that is, after the murder. The prosecution convinced the jury that this woman would do anything to please her son, so her testimony could not be trusted. During the trial, other details also surfaced. Luke Mitchell claimed that he had not communicated with another girl for months before Jodi's murder. However, phone call records showed that they had been in contact 79 times over a long period, including just 2 hours after Luke's last intimate contact with Jodi, 2 days before the tragedy. Moreover, immediately after the murder, he was going to go on a 2-week trip with his mistress. Another piece of evidence against Luke was his admission in court that he had smoked so much marijuana over the course of a year that sometimes he would smoke almost a pack a week. Jodi's classmates said that they saw them together during the lunch break on the day of the murder, and they were also smoking. A court psychologist noted that Luke Mitchell was quick-tempered, aggressive, and unable to control himself. The only thing that surprised those present was the fact that his mother confirmed this diagnosis. Usually, such cases also feature DNA evidence, but not in this instance. Since the teenagers were dating and had an intimate relationship, and Luke then touched the bloodied body, an agreement was reached between the parties not to use DNA evidence in court, as it was impossible to explain its origin. Experts examined more than 120 items at the crime scene and did not find a single sample that would confirm or refute Mitchell's guilt. However, a used condom was found in front of the wall, and although the DNA found on it belonged to another man, there were no foreign traces on the girl's body, so this evidence was also excluded from the case. Despite all the arguments of the defense, the evidence presented was enough for the jury to deliver a guilty verdict on January 21, 2005. Even an attempt to bring them to the place where the body was found, where Mitchell's lawyers tried to show that it was the dog that led him to the corpse, did not help. After a 5-hour discussion, Luke was found guilty of murder and selling marijuana. Upon hearing the court's decision, he showed no emotion. Later, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with the right to parole after 20 years. Luke Mitchell began serving his sentence in an institution for juvenile offenders in Polmont, and then was transferred to Greenock Prison. Until 2021, he filed numerous appeals, but none of them were successful. The lawyers managed to attract media attention and gain the sympathy of a part of society that believes he was convicted without sufficient evidence. They also violated his rights during the first interrogation, since he was 14 and the police spoke with him without a lawyer present. In 2019, a therapist named Sandra Lean even organized a fundraiser in support of Luke Mitchell, urging people to open their eyes to the lies and restore justice for Jodi and Luke. Later, the family of the deceased girl publicly criticized her, stating that they had always been sure that the police had convicted the right person. Be that as it may, so far no attempts to mitigate the sentence have brought Luke Mitchell closer to release. And in June 2023, he failed a standardized drug test, thus delaying his parole application until at least 2026. In my opinion, as long as the family of the murdered child is alive, he's unlikely to get out of prison. What do you think? Did the prosecution present enough evidence? And did they do justice to a 14-year-old? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Traditionally, thank you for watching and remind you that it would be great if you support the video by liking and subscribing to the channel. It's always interesting and sometimes even creepy.